If you've ever felt like you're playing a role in your own family, like you're constantly auditioning for approval you'll never quite get, then you already know a piece of my story. My name is Emily, and for years, my Christmases weren't about joy or goodwill, they were about survival. Specifically, surviving the annual holiday gauntlet at my family's lavish estate, where every designer label, every luxury car, and every glittering piece of jewelry was a silent, yet deafening declaration of status, and I, with my perfectly functional but undeniably old Honda Civic, was the perennial outlier. It was Christmas Eve, and the air was thick with the scent of pine, cinnamon, and the unspoken judgment that always seemed to cling to my family like expensive cologne. Their sprawling mansion, nestled amidst manicured lawns and twinkling fairy lights, was a beacon of opulence in our affluent suburban town. My family, my parents, my older sister Jessica and her husband Mark, and my younger brother Kevin with his new, impossibly glamorous girlfriend Chloe, all lived lives steeped in luxury. Jessica, in particular, reveled in it. Her social media, a meticulously curated shrine to designer bags, exotic vacations, and her husband Mark's burgeoning real estate empire. I, on the other hand, was a software engineer, a good one, a highly compensated one. In fact, I worked at a leading tech firm, designing complex algorithms and innovative user interfaces. My work was intellectually stimulating, challenging, and it paid well enough for me to live comfortably in my own charming, if modest, apartment downtown. I was independent, self-sufficient, and proud of the life I had built. But in the eyes of my family, especially Jessica, I was perpetually doing well for Emily. It was always couched in that condescending qualifier, implying that my path, while respectable, wasn't quite up to par with theirs. Emily's little coding job, Jessica would often quip, a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand. So technical, I could never understand all that nerd stuff. Never mind that my nerd stuff earned me a six-figure salary and offered more intellectual freedom than her perfectly appointed life. Tonight, the focus of their gentle and not-so-gentle mockery was my car. My trusty, if somewhat rusty, 2010 Honda Civic. It had seen me through college, through my early career, and through countless road trips. It was reliable, economical, and a testament to my pragmatic nature. To them, it was an eyesore. I pulled into the expansive driveway, carefully parking my Civic among a fleet of luxury SUVs and sports cars. There was Jessica's brand new Range Rover, Mark's gleaming Porsche 911, and my father's classic Mercedes. Even Kevin, fresh out of business school, had a flashy new BMW, courtesy of a graduation gift from our parents. My little Honda stuck out like a sore thumb, a visible testament to my perceived lack of ambition. Or perhaps my lack of flashy ambition. As I walked towards the brightly lit front door, I could already feel the familiar prickle of anxiety. This wasn't just Christmas, it was an unspoken competition, and I always felt like I was starting with a handicap. "Emily, darling," my mother greeted me with an air kiss, her eyes already scanning my outfit for any imperfections. "You made it, and so quickly, despite the traffic." Her gaze subtly flickered towards the driveway, an unspoken comment about my slow, old car. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to ignore the jab. I stepped inside, immediately enveloped by the warmth, the festive decorations, and the scent of expensive perfume. Emily. Finally, Jessica swooped in, her diamond earrings sparkling under the chandelier. She gave me a hug that felt more like a quick pat. "We were just talking about you. Kevin was wondering if you needed a lift next time. You know, to save on gas. That old thing must drink fuel like crazy." She laughed, a brittle, high-pitched sound, and Kevin and Chloe chuckled along. I forced a smile. "No, thanks, Jess. My Civic's actually quite fuel-efficient and reliable, unlike some of the gas guzzlers out there." I shot a pointed glance at Mark's Porsche through the window. Mark, never one to miss an opportunity to flex, smirked. "Reliable, sure. But is it a statement, Emily? Does it say, 'I've arrived'? Or does it say, 'I'm still stuck in college, trying to make ends meet'?" He patted his expensive watch. In this world, perception is everything. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Mark, I countered, my voice calm, though my blood pressure was definitely rising. Not my car. Oh, Emily! Jessica sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. Always so earnest. Look, we just worry about you. You work so hard, but you don't seem to enjoy the fruits of your labor. She gestured around the lavish living room. This is what success looks like, though. Darling, not driving a 12-year-old car. Chloe, Kevin's girlfriend, who I'd only met a couple of times, chimed in. Yeah, I mean, even Kevin has a new bimmer. And he's just starting out, she giggled. As if this was the most hilarious thing she'd ever heard. A knot tightened in my stomach. This was the same old song and dance. Every Christmas, every family gathering. It was the same subtle chipping away at my self-worth, disguised as concern or playful teasing. They never outright said I wasn't successful. They just constantly reminded me of how my version of success didn't fit their mold. My practical choices, my intellectual pursuits, my focus on substance over superficiality, they were all viewed as charmingly eccentric, but ultimately somewhat pathetic. The comments stung, as they always did. I had spent years trying to understand why their approval mattered so much, why their constant needling found such fertile ground in my insecurities. Part of it was the ingrained desire for family acceptance, but a larger part was the deep-seated fear that perhaps, just perhaps, they were right, that my quiet ambition, my comfortable but not flashy lifestyle, meant I was missing something, that I wasn't enough. I remembered countless similar moments from my past. When I had graduated top of my class in computer science, Mom had celebrated by saying, "Well, it's a good practical degree. Dear, very stable. You won't have to worry about finding a husband, at least." The implication being that my academic achievements were merely a stepping stone to securing a man. When I bought my first apartment, a cozy one-bedroom in a bustling part of the city, Jessica had visited and exclaimed, "Oh, it's so cute, just like a dollhouse. Ours has a guest wing, you know." Always the comparison, always the subtle put-down. It wasn't just about the car. It was about everything. My choice of partner, for example. For years, my family had tried to set me up with eligible bachelors from good families, aspiring lawyers, investment bankers, real estate magnates. They were all charming enough, but utterly devoid of the intellectual curiosity or genuine kindness I sought. They were just like my family, obsessed with appearances, with the superficial markers of success. And then, a few months ago, I had met Liam. Liam. The thought of him brought a soft, private smile to my lips, a warm antidote to the chill of my family's judgment. We'd met at a tech conference, both presenting on AI ethics. He was brilliant, humble, and possessed a dry wit that perfectly matched my own. We'd spent hours talking about everything from quantum physics to obscure indie films. He drove a modest, older sedan, dressed simply, and never once spoke about his wealth or status. He was just Liam, and he saw me, the real me, not Emily, the overlooked sister, the owner of the old Civic, but Emily, the sharp, passionate engineer, the woman who loved solving complex problems and debating philosophical concepts. We had deliberately kept our relationship quiet, a private oasis away from the scrutinizing eyes of my family. Liam understood. He knew my family's dynamic, how they operated. He never pressured me to introduce him, saying simply, "Your family's approval isn't a prerequisite for my happiness, Emily. Your happiness is..." He was a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the suffocating expectations I had grown up with. As the evening wore on, the comments about my car continued to surface, like tiny, irritating gnats. "Are you sure that car will make it through the winter? Emily, we wouldn't want you stranded. Maybe Santa will bring you a new Mercedes this year. Emily, you've been such a good girl." Each remark was accompanied by fake smiles and thinly veiled amusement. My younger cousin, Sarah, a sweet girl who was genuinely curious about my work, came up to me. "Aunt Emily, what kind of car do you have? My dad says it's really old." I knelt down, meeting her gaze. It's a Honda Civic. Honey, it's not flashy, but it gets me where I need to go. It's reliable, and it's paid for. It's a smart choice. Jessica, overhearing, snorted. Smart for the financially challenged, maybe. I straightened up, turning to face her, a new resolve hardening my gaze. You know, Jess, not everyone needs to define themselves by the car they drive, or the house they live in, or the brand names they wear. Some of us define ourselves by what we do, by what we create, and by the kind of people we are. Jessica's eyes narrowed. This was a direct challenge, and she wasn't used to me pushing back so assertively. Oh, is that a dig at us, Emily? Because we enjoy nice things, is that what this is about, just jealousy? No, it's not jealousy, I said, my voice low but firm. It's about genuine happiness. It's about finding fulfillment in things that actually matter. Things that don't depreciate in value the moment you drive them off the lot. My parents, sensing the rising tension, quickly intervened, ushering everyone towards the dining room. The Christmas feast was, as always, an extravagant affair. Roast turkey, glazed ham, every conceivable side dish, and enough fine wine to sink a small ship. Despite the abundance, I found myself picking at my food, the emotional indigestion too overwhelming. Throughout dinner, my mother periodically tried to steer the conversation towards my non-existent love life. So, Emily, any special someone on the horizon? You know, Christmas is always better with a partner. David and Emily have each other. Kevin has Chloe. I'm actually quite happy on my own, Mom, I said, deflecting. I wasn't ready to bring Liam into this shark tank. Not yet. Happy but alone, she muttered under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. It was this moment, this quiet, insidious jab at my happiness, that truly sealed it. The freeloader accusation from my previous story paled in comparison to the sting of being deemed alone, and therefore, implicitly, unhappy or incomplete in their eyes. It wasn't just about my car. It was about their fundamental inability to see my life as whole and fulfilling unless it conformed to their narrow cartels, materialistic definition of success. I felt a surge of something new, not just anger or shame, but a deep, fierce protectiveness, not just for myself, but for Liam, for the beautiful, private world we had built together. I wouldn't let them touch that. I wouldn't let them cheapen it with their superficial judgments. As the evening wound down and guests began to trickle out, the car comments resurfaced one last time. Mark, standing by the door, clapped my father on the back. Well, at least Emily's humble ride is consistent, never changes, just like her. He laughed, and Jessica joined in. I walked past them, head held high. Some things, I said, turning back to face them, a serene smile on my face, are worth holding on to. And some things are about to change in ways you can't possibly imagine. Their laughter died. My cryptic statement hung in the air, a small, unexpected declaration of defiance. I didn't wait for their reaction. I simply walked out, got into my old Civic, and drove away, leaving the glittering, superficial world of their Christmas behind. The engine purred reliably, carrying me towards a future they knew nothing about. A future that was about to pull up in a very different kind of vehicle. And if you've ever felt the quiet power of knowing something truly magnificent that no one else sees, hit that like and subscribe button. Because trust me, you won't believe what happens next. The drive home from my family's Christmas Eve gathering was usually a melancholy affair. The sting of their thinly veiled criticisms, the heavy weight of their expectations, would settle over me like a cold, damp blanket. But this time, something was different. The familiar ache was still there, yes, but beneath it, a new feeling stirred, a quiet defiance, a simmering resolve. Their words about my old Civic, about my perceived aloneness, no longer felt like sharp darts. They felt like echoes of a past I was rapidly outgrowing. I pulled into my apartment complex, the trusty Civic purring softly as I parked. Stepping out, I looked back at its familiar, unassuming silhouette under the soft glow of the streetlights. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't new. But it was mine. It had been with me through thick and thin. a silent witness to my struggles and my quiet triumphs. And unlike the expensive status symbol cars my family drove, it didn't come with an invisible price tag of judgment and expectation. As I unlocked my apartment door, the silence inside was a welcome balm. No lingering sense of expensive perfume or stale arguments, just the clean, fresh smell of my own space. I kicked off my shoes, poured myself a glass of water, and sank onto my sofa, the Christmas lights on my small parker potted fir tree casting a gentle glow on the walls. My mind, however, was anything but peaceful. The evening's events replayed themselves, each snide comment, each dismissive glance, a fresh prick. But instead of letting the shame wash over me, I found myself examining the roots of their behavior, trying to understand the source of their obsession with wealth and status. And as I did, a clearer picture began to emerge, not just of them, but of myself, and the patterns I needed to break. My family's fixation on material wealth wasn't arbitrary. It was deeply rooted in their past, a past they rarely spoke about but which had clearly shaped their present. My grandparents, on my mother's side, had grown up during the Great Depression. They had known genuine poverty, had struggled for every meal, every penny. My mother, in turn, was raised with an acute awareness of financial precarity, an unspoken fear of ever returning to that state. This fear, I realized, had morphed into an insatiable need for security, which she equated with visible signs of wealth and status. She had instilled this in us, her children, from a young age. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it certainly buys comfort, she'd often say, her eyes gleaming with conviction. And comfort is peace of mind. But for her, comfort wasn't just about having enough. It was about having more than enough, about having enough to be admired, envied, and therefore, in her mind, respected. I remembered countless childhood episodes that reinforced this. When I was 8, I'd won a school art competition. I was so proud of my colorful painting. I showed it to my mother, bursting with excitement. Her reaction, "That's lovely, dear. But your cousin, Michael, just got into that prestigious private school. That's real achievement, Emily." My creative pursuits, my intrinsic joys, were always overshadowed by someone else's external, material success. As a teenager, my academic achievements were consistently framed through the lens of future earnings potential. "You're so good at math, Emily, you should be an accountant. They make good money." Or, "Engineering is a solid choice, very stable. You'll be able to afford a nice house, unlike some people." The implicit message was always clear. My intelligence was a tool to acquire wealth and status, not a means for personal fulfillment or intellectual exploration. Jessica, my older sister, absorbed these lessons more thoroughly than I did. She excelled at social graces, at cultivating the right connections, at understanding the unspoken rules of the affluent circles our parents aspired to. She married Mark, a man whose family wealth preceded him, and together they built a life that perfectly mirrored our parents' materialistic ideals. Their perfectly coordinated outfits, their meticulously planned vacations, their relentless pursuit of the latest luxury items. It was all a performance, a constant affirmation of their arrived status. And they expected me to play along, to admire, to aspire to their version of success. My resistance to this materialistic worldview often put me at odds with them. When I chose to pursue computer science, they were initially pleased because it was practical. But when I expressed my disinterest in corporate ladder climbing and my preference for innovative, mission-driven projects, their enthusiasm waned. "But Emily, the bonuses, the prestige. Don't you want to be a VP by 30 like David's friend from Wharton?" they'd ask, genuinely perplexed by my lack of desire for visible power. Their financial manipulation was more subtle than blatant. It wasn't about directly borrowing money, though that had happened with my mother in the past, quickly dismissed as helping family. It was about the constant pressure to conform, to spend, to keep up. "Why are you still driving that old car, Emily? It looks so unprofessional. What will people think?" The guilt trips, the thinly veiled criticisms of my frugality, the suggestions that I was somehow depriving myself by not indulging in the same luxuries as them. It was a constant, low-level hum of judgment. I remembered one particularly galling conversation with Jessica. I had just gotten a significant promotion at work, a testament to my hard work and expertise. I called her, excited, hoping for genuine congratulations. Instead, her first question was, "Oh, that's great. So does this mean you can finally afford to upgrade that apartment? Maybe something with a better address, and definitely a new car. We saw a great deal on a Mercedes SUV the other day." The conversation quickly devolved into her lecturing me about investing in my image, as if my worth was directly tied to the perceived value of my possessions. It was exhausting. It was soul-crushing. Every time I tried to assert my own values, my own definition of success, I was met with blank stares, condescending smiles, or outright dismissal. They genuinely believed they were helping me, guiding me towards a better life, oblivious to the fact that their constant pressure was slowly eroding my self-esteem and my sense of self. And the car, my faithful Civic, it had become a symbol. To them, it represented my failure to accumulate visible wealth. To me, it represented my resistance, my deliberate choice to prioritize functionality, sustainability, and financial prudence over superficial display. It was a tangible manifestation of my refusal to play their game, to chase their fleeting markers of status. It was my quiet rebellion. In the quiet of my apartment, I scrolled through my phone, looking at old photos, pictures of my family's perfect vacations, Jessica's designer wardrobe, Kevin's flashy new gadgets. Then, I stopped at a photo of Liam and me. We were on a hiking trail, disheveled, sweaty, but beaming, our arms around each other. We looked genuinely happy, unburdened by external expectations. It was a stark contrast to the posed, filtered perfection of my family's social media. Liam was everything my family wouldn't understand. He wasn't flashy. He dressed in comfortable, practical clothes. He drove an older model car, though. I now knew it was a perfectly maintained classic muscle car, not a beat-up sedan. He lived in a tastefully minimalist apartment. He didn't brag about his achievements, which, as I was slowly discovering, were immense. He ran a hugely successful, ethical tech startup that specialized in sustainable energy solutions. His wealth, when I finally understood its true extent, was staggering, but it was carefully managed, invested in ventures he believed in, and almost entirely invisible to the casual observer. He was a quiet billionaire, a rare breed who valued purpose over public display. Our conversations were never about money or status. They were about ideas, about making a difference, about building a life of meaning and shared values. He encouraged my intellectual curiosity, challenged my assumptions, and always made me feel seen and valued for who I was, not what I had. He was the antidote to everything my family represented. And being with him, I slowly started to shed the layers of insecurity that my family had so meticulously built around me. I began to trust my own judgment, to define my own success, to embrace my own unique path. As I sat there, the Christmas lights twinkling, a powerful realization washed over me. Their mockery of my car, their insidious comments about my life choices. They weren't about me at all. They were about them, about their own fears, their own insecurities, their own desperate need to validate their choices by diminishing mine. My old Civic wasn't just a car. It was a mirror reflecting their own deepest anxieties. And Liam was the ultimate disruption to their narrative. He was the quiet power, the understated wealth, the genuine happiness that defied all their materialistic metrics. They would never understand him, not truly. And that was precisely why I needed him. He was not just my partner. He was a living, breathing testament to a different kind of success. A success that transcended the superficial and delved into the profound. A peaceful resolve settled over me. I wasn't going to let their words define me anymore. I wasn't going to let their expectations dictate my happiness. I had Liam, a man who saw my true worth, a man who loved me for me. And soon, very soon, they would have to face the reality that their poor Emily, the one driving the old Civic, had found a happiness and a partner that far surpassed anything their materialistic world could offer. The next Christmas, things would be different, very, very different. I closed my eyes, picturing Liam's kind smile, feeling a quiet strength fill me. My family's mocking laughter about my car was still an echo, but now it was a distant one, fading into the background as a new, more harmonious melody began to play. If you've ever felt judged for your choices, or like your family just doesn't get you, let me know in the comments below. Trust me, it gets better. The weeks after that Christmas Eve were a slow, quiet unraveling of old anxieties and the weaving of new, stronger threads of hope. The sting of my family's comments still lingered, a phantom ache, but it was overshadowed by the growing warmth of my relationship with Liam. While my family measured worth in horsepower and square footage, Liam measured it in shared laughter, intellectual curiosity, and genuine connection. And with every passing day, his quiet strength and unwavering belief in me became the foundation upon which I was finally, truly, building my own sense of self-worth. Our relationship wasn't a whirlwind romance filled with grand, public gestures. It was a gradual, deepening connection built on shared values and mutual respect. We met for coffee at quaint, independent cafes, preferring quiet corners where we could talk for hours. We explored hiking trails outside the city, his calm presence a soothing balm to my often overthinking mind. We challenged each other with obscure trivia and debated complex ethical dilemmas from our respective tech fields. He never once asked about my family's wealth, nor did he ever subtly hint at his own. He was just Liam, brilliant, kind, and incredibly grounded. For years, my family had tried to orchestrate my love life. They had paraded a string of suitable bachelors before me, aspiring lawyers, ambitious financiers, scions of good families. Each one seemed to carry the same invisible label approved by the family. They were men who understood the unwritten rules of their social strata, men who would fit seamlessly into the materialistic world my parents and sister inhabited. They were polished, charming, and utterly, soul-crushingly boring to me. They talked about their latest investments, their golf handicaps, and the importance of networking. I yearned for conversations about the cosmos, about art, about the human condition, and with Liam, I found it all. Liam was a mystery, in the most delightful way. He rarely spoke about his work, only hinting at a tech startup in renewable energy. He drove a classic, impeccably maintained Ford Mustang, a car he clearly cherished for its engineering and history, not its status symbol. He dressed simply, usually in well-made jeans and a plain t-shirt or a casual button-down. He was unassuming, but there was an undeniable quiet power about him, a sense of deep intelligence and immense capability. He listened with an intensity that made me feel truly heard, and his advice, when offered, was always insightful and devoid of judgment. I remembered one early date, sitting in a bustling coffee shop, discussing a particularly thorny problem I was facing at work, a complex bug in a new algorithm. He listened patiently, then, without boasting, offered a brilliant, elegant solution that I hadn't even considered. It was clear he understood my field deeply, perhaps even more so than I realized. Yet he presented it not as a fix, but as a collaborative idea, always giving me credit for my own insights. That was Liam. He empowered, he didn't overshadow. As our relationship blossomed, I found myself confiding in him more and more about my family. I recounted the Christmas Eve dinner, the jabs about my Civic, the constant pressure to conform to their materialistic ideals. He listened without interrupting, his eyes filled with compassion, never pity. "It sounds like they're projecting their own insecurities onto you, Emily," he'd said gently. "It's often easier for people to criticize what they don't understand, especially when it challenges their own worldview. Your independence, your quiet strength, that's a threat to their need for control and their narrow definition of success." His words echoed Uncle John's observation from my previous encounter, a shared wisdom that felt profoundly validating. Liam understood the invisible chains that my family tried to bind me with. He understood my longing for genuine connection, for a life free from the relentless pursuit of outward appearances. One crisp autumn evening, after a long hike in the hills overlooking the city, we sat on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. The air was cool, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. It was one of those perfect moments where everything felt right, complete. "Emily," Liam began, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "I've never met anyone like you. You're brilliant, kind, fiercely independent. And you see the world with a clarity that most people miss." He turned to face me, his hand gently taking mine. His eyes, usually so calm, held a rare intensity. "You deserve a life where you are celebrated for exactly who you are, not for what you own or who you know." My heart fluttered. I knew, instinctively, where this was going, but it felt entirely different from any romantic movie cliché. It felt real, raw, profound. "And I want to be the person who celebrates you, every single day," he continued, his thumb gently caressing my knuckles. He reached into his pocket, and my breath hitched. It wasn't a huge, gaudy diamond. It was a beautiful, elegant ring with a unique, ethically sourced emerald, flanked by two small, brilliant cut diamonds. It was perfect, distinctly us. He got down on one knee, right there on the dusty path, completely unconcerned with appearances or setting. "Emily," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "will you marry me? Will you build a life with me? A life defined by our shared values, our adventures, and our quiet, profound happiness." Tears welled in my eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy and relief. This was it. This was the true validation, the genuine acceptance I had unconsciously craved for so long. It wasn't about a Lamborghini or a mansion. It was about this man, kneeling before me, offering his heart, his respect, and a future built on authenticity. "Yes," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Liam, 1,000 times yes." He grinned, a genuine, dazzling smile that rarely graced his reserved features. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. We embraced, a long, silent hug that conveyed more than words ever could. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of nature, I felt a sense of peace and belonging that transcended anything my family's world could offer. We spent the next few days in a blissful bubble, savoring our engagement in private. We talked about our future, our dreams, our shared vision for a life built on purpose and connection. He spoke more openly about his company, Solara Innovations, and its mission to revolutionize renewable energy. The scale of his ambition, the depth of his knowledge, and the quiet integrity with which he ran his business were awe-inspiring. I learned that Solara Innovations was not just successful. It was one of the leading forces in its field, quietly revolutionizing the industry with groundbreaking technology. His wealth, I realized, was not just substantial, it was generational, built on true innovation and ethical leadership. It hit me then Liam's modest car, his simple clothes, his understated demeanor. They were not signs of a lack of means, but a deliberate choice, a choice to live authentically, to avoid the superficial trappings of extreme wealth, and to value experiences and impact over ostentation. He was the antithesis of everything my family valued, and that made him even more precious to me. "So," I said to him one evening, a mischievous glint in my eye, "how do we tell my family?" Liam chuckled. "Well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? I assume they're still under the impression that you're dating someone who drives a beat-up old sedan, if they think you're dating anyone at all." "Oh, absolutely," I confirmed. "They're convinced I'm either happily single, which they translate as sadly alone, or dating some equally sensible and unambitious engineer from my office." I paused, a wicked idea forming in my mind. What if we don't tell them everything right away? Liam raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Oh, do tell, Emily. I'm intrigued. They're already expecting me to show up at the Christmas Day brunch," I explained. "And they're undoubtedly going to make their usual comments about my car, about my life choices, about me being single or with some boring guy." I paused, the idea growing bolder, more delicious. What if you pull up in something that makes a statement a very loud statement? Liam's eyes twinkled. "Are you suggesting a grand entrance? Emily, a little dramatic flair. Just a touch, I said. A grin spreading across my face. They've spent years judging me by what I don't have. Maybe it's time they saw what I do have. Not just the physical manifestation of wealth, but the freedom to choose it, or not to, and the profound happiness that comes from being with someone who truly sees and values me. Liam leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, he said, I have a few collector cars. Nothing I typically drive for daily errands, but for a special occasion. He paused, a slow smile spreading across his face. I think I know just the one that would make the right impression. My heart soared. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about asserting my worth, about drawing a definitive line in the sand. It was about showing my family that their superficial judgments were meaningless, and that true happiness lay beyond their narrow, materialistic worldview. It was about reclaiming my narrative, on my own terms, and having Liam, my quiet billionaire fiancé, pull up in a statement car was going to be the ultimate mic drop. Christmas was coming, and this time, Emily wasn't just showing up, she was making an entrance. If you've ever dreamed of a moment where you finally get to prove everyone wrong, hit that like and subscribe button, because the real show is about to begin. The emerald ring on my finger, a quiet symbol of my commitment to Liam, felt both comforting and exhilarating. It was a secret, for now, one that hummed with anticipation beneath the surface of my daily life. Liam and I spent hours talking, not just about our future together, but about the reveal to my family. We knew it wouldn't be easy. Their reactions were as predictable as the sunrise, steeped in judgment and an almost pathological need to categorize everyone by their material worth. They're going to lose their minds, I said to Liam one evening, curled up on his sofa, the city lights twinkling outside his panoramic window. His apartment, unlike my family's ostentatious mansion, was a testament to understated luxury, minimalist design, high-quality materials, and a breathtaking view that money alone couldn't buy. It felt like a sanctuary. Liam chuckled, pulling me closer. That's an understatement. They'll probably think I'm a con artist, or that you've suddenly become a gold digger. Exactly, I sighed. They can't fathom genuine success that isn't loud and obnoxious from the get-go. They always look for the angle, the hidden agenda. Which is why, Liam said, his voice thoughtful, we don't give them the full story up front. Let them make their assumptions. Let them judge. And then, when the time is right, we show them exactly how wrong they are. We strategized. We decided against a formal announcement before Christmas. No engagement party, no pre-holiday calls to break the news. We wanted the full impact of Liam's appearance to land without preamble. It wasn't about revenge, not truly. It was about reclaiming control, about demonstrating unequivocally that their shallow judgments held no power over my happiness or my choices. It was about creating a moment so undeniable, so visually striking, that it would force them to confront their own biases. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, my interactions with my family remained consistent with their usual patterns of subtle condescension and probing questions. Every phone call, every brief coffee meeting, felt like a miniature battlefield where I practiced holding my ground. So, Emily, my mother would begin, her voice sweet, yet laced with a familiar prodding curiosity. Still seeing that engineer friend of yours. What was his name? Liam, wasn't it? He seemed quiet. Does he have a good job? Is he, ambitious? I'd learned to give vague, non-committal answers. Liam's doing great, Mom. And yes, he's very ambitious, in his own way. I'd deliberately leave out details, knowing that any information I offered would be dissected, analyzed, and ultimately used against me. It was a tedious dance, but I was becoming a master of deflection. Jessica, predictably, was worse. Seriously, when are you going to get a real car? Mark saw this amazing new SUV that would look so good on you. We can even get you a great deal through his dealership contacts. It's just embarrassing, pulling up in that Civic. My Civic gets me where I need to go, Jess, I'd reply, a practiced calm in my voice. And I'm happy with it. I don't really care what other people think of my car. She'd just scoff. Oh, Emily, you say that, but everyone cares. Image is everything, especially when you're trying to attract a certain caliber of man. Her implication was clear. I was still single in her mind, and my old car was holding me back from snagging a wealthy partner. Little did she know. The week before Christmas, the calls intensified. My mother rang, ostensibly to finalize holiday plans, but clearly fishing for information. "So, you're driving yourself to Christmas Day brunch, dear alone, or is your little friend joining you?" Her tone suggested little friend was synonymous with unsuitable companion. "Liam will be joining me, Mom," I stated, deliberately vague about his relationship to me. I knew the word friend would fuel her assumptions. "And yes, I'll be driving." "Oh, well, that's nice," she said, sounding utterly unconvinced. "Just make sure he knows how to find our driveway. It can be a bit tricky, especially if you're not used to larger properties." Another subtle dig at Liam's presumed lack of experience with luxury. "I think he'll manage, Mom," I said, a hidden smile playing on my lips. He's surprisingly good with directions. The internal struggle was real. A part of me, the insecure Emily from years past, still wanted their approval, yearned for a moment where they would genuinely see and celebrate me. But the stronger, newer Emily, forged in Liam's unwavering belief and my own burgeoning self-worth, knew that their approval was a poisoned chalice. It came with strings attached, with conditions and judgments that would forever keep me beholden to their superficial values. This time, the Christmas gathering wouldn't be about seeking their acceptance. It would be about setting a boundary so clear, so undeniable, that it would reshape our dynamic forever. It would be about declaring my independence, not just financially, but emotionally. Liam and I discussed the logistics in painstaking detail. We mapped out the arrival time, the parking situation, even the exact moment he would pull up. He had suggested something even more subtle, but I insisted. They need a jolt. Liam, they need something so obvious, so in their face, that they can't possibly ignore it or spin it. He looked at me, his eyes full of understanding and a touch of admiration. "All right, Em, your call. This is your moment, and I'm here to support you, however you want to play it." His willingness to embrace my plan, even when it involved a touch of theatricality, solidified my love for him. He respected my needs, my history, and my desire for this moment of powerful self-affirmation. As Christmas Day dawned, a nervous energy buzzed through me. I chose my outfit carefully, not something ostentatious, but a chic, elegant dress that made me feel confident and poised. I wanted to look my best, not for them, but for myself. This wasn't about outdressing them. It was about presenting myself as the woman I had become. I ate a light breakfast, trying to calm my stomach. My phone buzzed with texts from Jessica. "Don't be late. Mom's already stressed about the roast." And from my mother. "Remember to bring your famous cranberry sauce. And is your friend bringing anything?" The passive-aggressive comments were still flowing freely, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that was about to occur in my life. I stepped outside to my Civic, its familiar shape a comforting presence. It felt like an old friend, ready for one last mission. I drove to my parents' mansion, the short journey filled with a mixture of dread and defiant excitement. The grander the stage, the more impactful the reveal. As I pulled into the crowded driveway, the usual fleet of luxury cars greeted me. Mark's Porsche, Jessica's Range Rover, Kevin's BMW. I parked my Civic carefully, sliding it into a spot near the back, almost hidden by a large evergreen bush. As I walked towards the front door, I saw Jessica and Mark on the porch, chatting with my father. "Look who finally showed up," Jessica called out, a smirk on her face. "And in the same old faithful good for you, Emily, sticking to your eco-friendly principles." Her tone made it clear she thought it was a pathetic excuse. Mark snickered. "Yeah, I thought maybe Santa would have brought you something with a bit more horsepower this year. A little upgrade." My father, usually more reserved, just offered a pitying smile. "Well, at least it's reliable, dear." I forced a smile, my heart pounding, but my gaze was steady. "It's more than reliable, Mark. It's a testament to good engineering. And actually," I added, a hint of steel in my voice, "I don't think I'll be needing a new car anytime soon." I'm quite happy with my transportation choices. Jessica narrowed her eyes, detecting something different in my tone. Oh, did your quiet little engineer friend finally scrape together enough for a down payment on a Civic of his own, she quipped, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Or is he still taking the bus? I just smiled, a genuine, knowing smile that completely disarmed her. He's actually doing quite well for himself, Jess. You'd be surprised. Just as Jessica was about to retort, her eyes darted past me towards the end of the long driveway. Her jaw, which had been set in a sneer, slowly began to slacken. Mark's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a look of utter disbelief. My father, who had been leaning against a pillar, straightened up, his eyes widening. A low, throaty rumble vibrated through the air, growing louder, more insistent. It was a sound that spoke of raw power, of precision engineering, of something utterly, unequivocally expensive. It was the sound of a Lamborghini. Every head on the porch turned, then every head in the front yard. Guests who were mingling on the lawn paused, their conversations dying out, all eyes fixed on the end of the driveway, where a sleek, vibrant yellow Lamborghini Aventador was slowly, deliberately, cruising towards the mansion. Its engine growled, a magnificent beast of a sound, echoing off the manicured hedges and expensive cars. It was a car that screamed wealth, status, and unapologetic luxury. It was the absolute antithesis of my humble Civic, and it was coming straight for this house. Jessica's face was a study in pure shock. What is that?" she stammered, her eyes wide, riveted to the approaching vehicle. Is that their new neighbor? Did someone buy the Miller estate?" The Lamborghini pulled up slowly, silently gliding to a halt directly in front of the mansion's ornate double doors, directly in front of my family. The engine purred, then settled into a low thrum. The iconic scissor doors lifted with a whisper of hydraulics, revealing the silhouette of a man emerging from the driver's seat. And it was Liam. He stepped out, not in a flashy suit, but in a simple, perfectly fitted cashmere sweater and dark jeans. He looked effortlessly elegant, calm, and utterly in control. He ran a hand through his dark hair, then turned, his eyes finding mine. A warm, loving smile spread across his face. He's here for you, Emily," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes still fixed on the gleaming yellow car. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Yes, Mom," I said, a triumphant smile finally breaking through. My voice was clear, ringing with newfound power. "He's here for me, and he's not just my friend. He's my fiancé." The words landed like a bombshell. Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark's jaw hung open. My father blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear his vision. Chloe, Kevin's girlfriend, looked absolutely green with envy. Liam walked towards me, his eyes never leaving mine. A silent acknowledgement of the years of judgment, the moments of dismissal, all culminating in this powerful, undeniable reveal. He reached me, took my hand, and gently kissed my knuckles, his eyes sparkling with amusement and deep affection. "Merry Christmas, Emily," he said, his voice low, his gaze sweeping over my utterly stunned family. Looks like I made it just in time for the big reveal. The silence from my family was profound, absolute. Their faces, usually so composed, so sure of their place in the world, were a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. The poor Emily, the one with the old car and the unambitious life, had just arrived with her quiet, understated fiancé, who had casually pulled up in a Lamborghini. The tables had not just turned, they had been utterly obliterated. This was the moment of reckoning, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly, completely seen, valued, and unequivocally, gloriously free. If you've ever wanted to watch a moment of pure, unadulterated shock unfold, hit that like and subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. The silence was thick, heavy, and utterly delicious. It hung in the crisp Christmas air, punctuated only by the low, almost imperceptible thrum of the Lamborghini's engine. My family, usually so quick with a witty barb or a condescending remark, stood frozen, their faces a tableau of disbelief, shock, and a dawning, terrible understanding. Jessica's hand was still clapped over her mouth, her eyes wide, darting from Liam to the Lamborghini, then back to me, as if trying to reconcile the image of her poor sister with this impossible reality. Mark, her husband, looked as if he'd been hit by a truck, his usual smug smirk replaced by a look of stunned bewilderment. My mother, usually the picture of composure, was literally gaping, her meticulously applied lipstick askew. My father simply stared, his jaw slack. Even Kevin and Chloe, usually quick to mock, were utterly speechless, their faces tinged with envy. Liam, ever the picture of quiet confidence, squeezed my hand gently. "Merry Christmas, everyone," he said, his voice calm, clear, and perfectly polite, yet carrying an undeniable weight. "I'm Liam, and as Emily just mentioned, I have the distinct pleasure of being her fiancé." He offered a small, almost imperceptible bow, a gesture of effortless grace that only heightened their discomfiture. The word fiancé seemed to hit them again. A second wave of shock. It wasn't just the Lamborghini, it was the implication. Emily, the one they always subtly undermined, the one they painted as unambitious and alone, had not only found a partner, but a partner who drove a car that cost more than their combined annual salaries. And he was here, now, undeniably real. My mother was the first to regain some semblance of composure, though her voice was still strained, almost a squeak. "Fiancé, Emily, why didn't you say anything, and this car, John? What is this?" Her eyes darted from Liam to the Lamborghini again, as if searching for a trick, a hidden camera, anything to explain away this impossible scene. "We wanted to share the news with everyone in person, Mom," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the triumphant joy bubbling inside me. And as for the car, Liam just prefers to be a bit more understated. Usually, this was a special occasion. The irony of me calling a Lamborghini understated was not lost on me, or on Liam, who gave my hand another squeeze, a silent acknowledgement of our shared amusement. Jessica, however, couldn't contain herself. She finally found her voice, high-pitched and laced with a desperate incredulity. "Understated, Emily. That's a Lamborghini Aventador. Do you know how much one of those costs? And you drive that old Civic. This has to be some kind of joke." She gestured wildly towards my humble Honda, almost hidden behind the sprawling bushes. Liam turned his calm gaze on Jessica, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "My car preferences and Emily's are just that, Jessica. Preferences. We don't believe in defining ourselves, or others, by the vehicles they choose to drive." His tone was polite, yet it carried an undeniable undercurrent of dismissal that silenced her immediately. It was the calm authority of a man who had nothing to prove, facing someone who had everything to prove. My father, bless his heart, finally stepped forward, extending a hesitant hand to Liam. "John, Liam, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Emily's father." He looked genuinely flustered, clearly trying to adapt to this new, unexpected reality. Liam shook his hand warmly. "A pleasure to meet you too, sir. Emily has told me so much about you all." His words were polite, neutral, giving nothing away. My mother, recovering slightly, quickly shifted gears, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "Well, this is quite a surprise. A wonderful surprise, Liam. Do come in. You must be freezing out here. Emily, why didn't you tell us your boyfriend was so successful?" The word boyfriend hung in the air, a belated attempt to downplay the fiancé bomb. "He's my fiancé, Mom," I corrected gently, holding up my left hand, letting the emerald ring flash subtly under the porch lights. I saw Jessica's eyes fix on it, then widen even further. Chloe, Kevin's girlfriend, finally managed to stammer, "Is that a real emerald? It's huge." She sounded breathless, envious. "It's real," Liam confirmed, his gaze returning to me. A private smile, just for us. The rest of the family quickly ushered us inside, their usual pretense of nonchalance completely shattered. The atmosphere inside the mansion was palpable. The air, usually thick with casual banter and thinly veiled competition, was now charged with stunned silence and frantic whispers. Heads turned as Liam and I walked through the opulent living room, every eye on him, on me, on the ring. My family's carefully constructed world of appearances had just been utterly, irrevocably upended. Jessica, however, couldn't let it go. As we settled in the living room, she sidled up to me, her voice low, almost hissing. "Emily, seriously, how did you even meet him, and why did you never say anything? Is he really rich? I mean, a Lamborghini. That's insane." "He's a very private person, Jess," I said, keeping my voice calm and even. "And he prefers to keep his life and his successes out of the public eye. We met at a tech conference." "A tech conference," she scoffed, clearly suspicious. "You mean like at your work, so he's just some other engineer. How did he get a car like that?" Her mind, still stuck in its narrow framework, couldn't reconcile Liam's understated demeanor with his obvious wealth. "Liam runs his own highly successful tech company in renewable energy," I stated, deliberately vague, not wanting to give her too much to latch onto. "He's an innovator, and he prefers to let his work speak for itself." She looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Envy, suspicion, grudging respect. "Well," she huffed, crossing her arms, "it's certainly different. Not exactly what we expected for you, Emily." "I'm sure it's not," I replied, a small, knowing smile on my face. "But then, I've never really been one to meet expectations, have I?" The rest of the Christmas brunch was a fascinating spectacle. My family, usually so confident in their social hierarchy, were completely off balance. My mother hovered around Liam, trying to extract information, asking about his family, his background, his investments. Liam, with practiced ease, deflected her questions with polite but firm answers, revealing very little, maintaining his quiet air of mystery. He complimented the food, engaged in polite conversation with my father, but he never boasted, never grandstanded. He simply existed, a powerful, understated presence that completely redefined the dynamics of the room. Mark tried to engage Liam in a man-to-man conversation about cars, boasting about his Porsche. Liam listened patiently, then offered a concise, highly technical analysis of the Lamborghini's engine and performance that left Mark utterly speechless, clearly out of his depth. Liam wasn't just wealthy, he was genuinely brilliant, in a way that intimidated them far more than any flashy display ever could. Kevin and Chloe, meanwhile, couldn't stop staring at Liam and at my ring. Chloe even went so far as to accidentally bump into me, pretending to admire the ring up close, whispering, "Seriously, Emily, how much is this thing worth? Is he like a billionaire?" I just smiled sweetly. "Liam values privacy, Chloe, and so do I." Throughout it all, I felt a sense of profound calm. Their judgments, their desperate need to categorize and diminish, had no power over me anymore. I watched them, almost as an observer, recognizing their frantic attempts to regain control, to fit Liam into their materialistic box. But he wouldn't fit. He transcended their definitions, and in doing so, he elevated me beyond them. The moment of truth had come. Not with a shouted argument, but with the silent arrival of a yellow supercar and the understated introduction of my fiancé. It was a confrontation of values, a clash between their superficiality and our authenticity. And in that clash, their power over me had shattered. Later in the afternoon, as gifts were being exchanged, my mother, perhaps in a last-ditch effort to assert her dominance, presented me with a small, conspicuously wrapped box. "For you, Emily, darling," she said, her voice a little too loud. "Something practical. You know, since you're so sensible." Inside was a designer wallet, a high-end brand she knew I wouldn't typically buy. "It's to replace that old worn-out one you always carry," she added, her eyes flashing a triumphant look at Jessica, as if to say, "See, I still know best." I smiled, holding up the beautiful but unnecessary wallet. "It's lovely, Mom," I said, genuinely. "But you know, I actually prefer my old one. It's sentimental, and it's seen me through a lot of important milestones." I then turned to Liam. a mischievous glint in my eye. Though, perhaps now, I'll need a new one for my new credit cards. I didn't elaborate, but the implication of Liam's wealth and my newfound access to it hung in the air. My mother's smile faltered. Jessica looked ready to explode. The power had shifted. The subtle digs, the condescending gifts, they no longer landed. I was immune. I had my own value, my own partner, and a life that was rich in ways they couldn't possibly comprehend. As the day drew to a close, Liam and I made our polite goodbyes. My family was still reeling, trying to process the day's revelations. My mother managed a strained smile, muttering something about having them over again soon. Jessica just stared, her eyes wide, still fixated on Liam. We walked out to the driveway, the Lamborghini gleaming under the twilight sky. Liam opened the scissor door for me, and I slid into the luxurious leather seat. The interior smelled of fine leather and new car, a stark contrast to the familiar scent of old upholstery in my Civic. As Liam settled into the driver's seat, he looked at me, his eyes full of warmth and amusement. "Well," he said, the engine purring to life, "I think that made an impression." I laughed, a joyous, unrestrained sound that felt completely liberating. "You could say that, Liam. You could definitely say that." As he pressed the start button, the engine roared to life, a magnificent guttural sound that reverberated through the quiet suburban street. We pulled away from the mansion, leaving my stunned family and their world of superficiality behind. The roar of the Lamborghini's engine was not just a sound of luxury. It was a symphony of defiance, of liberation, of a new beginning. My old car had been mocked, but my new fiancé had pulled up in a Lamborghini, and in doing so, he had handed me the keys to my own freedom, forever silencing the critics. If you've ever felt the sweet taste of victory after years of being underestimated, hit that like and subscribe button, because this story is far from over, but the best part has just begun. The Christmas Day brunch had been a watershed moment, a stark line drawn in the sand between the old me and the new. As Liam and I drove away in the growling Lamborghini, leaving my stunned family behind, I felt a sense of exhilaration that was almost dizzying. It wasn't just the sheer spectacle of Liam's entrance. It was the quiet, profound realization that their judgment, their materialistic worldview, no longer had any power over me. I was finally free. The drive back to my apartment was filled with a comfortable silence, punctuated by the powerful hum of the engine. Liam reached over and squeezed my hand. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes soft with concern. "That was quite an ordeal." "More than all right," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. It was liberating. For years, I felt like I was constantly on trial, always falling short of their impossible standards. Today, that ended. "Thank you, Liam, for everything." He simply smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Anytime. Just tell me when you need another dramatic entrance." Over the next few months, our lives settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. We began planning our wedding, a process that felt refreshingly authentic. Unlike the elaborate, ostentatious affairs my family usually favored, Liam and I envisioned an intimate celebration. We chose a beautiful, secluded botanical garden for the ceremony, with a small reception at a charming farm-to-table restaurant. It was about celebrating our love and commitment, not about putting on a show for the sake of appearances. My family's reactions to the wedding plans were predictably mixed. My mother initially tried to take over, suggesting a grand ballroom, a guest list of hundreds, and a budget that would make my head spin. "Emily, you can't get married in a garden. What will people think? Liam is clearly a man of means. You need a wedding that reflects his status." I held firm. "Mom, this is our wedding. Liam and I want something intimate and meaningful to us. We appreciate your suggestions, but we've made our decisions." It was the first time I had ever truly stood my ground so unequivocally against her, and the experience was empowering. She huffed, she sighed, but for the first time, she backed down. The Lamborghini had done its job. It had instilled a new, grudging respect, or at least a fear of challenging Liam's, and by extension, my preferences too overtly. Jessica, ever the envious one, tried a different tactic. She questioned my choice of dress, a sleek, elegant silk gown instead of a traditional, heavily beaded ball gown. It's so simple, Emily. Are you sure you don't want something more grand to really show off? I just smiled and told her it was exactly what I wanted. Her attempts to provoke insecurity now felt almost comical. Her power was gone. My relationship with my father, surprisingly, began to thaw. He called me more often, genuinely interested in my work, in Liam. He even confided some of his own quiet frustrations with my mother's materialism. Your mother, he'd sighed one evening. She's always been so focused on what others think. It's exhausting. It was a small opening, but a significant one. I realized he, too, had been living under the weight of her expectations, albeit in a different way. We started finding common ground, sharing a quiet understanding that had been missing for years. Liam's presence in my life wasn't just about the dramatic reveal. It was about the profound, consistent support he offered. He was my anchor, my confidant, and my biggest fan. He encouraged me to pursue new professional challenges, to take on speaking engagements at tech conferences, and to invest in my own intellectual growth. With his unwavering belief, I felt capable of anything. My career at the tech firm flourished. I was promoted again, taking on more leadership responsibilities, and my contributions were consistently recognized. I was thriving, truly thriving. For the first time in my professional life, unburdened by the need for external validation. The biggest shift, however, was internal. I no longer felt the constant pull of my family's approval. The sting of their past comments had faded, replaced by a deep understanding of their own insecurities. I saw their need for status not as a reflection of my inadequacy, but as their own coping mechanism, their own way of navigating a world they perceived as harsh and judgmental. I could approach them with compassion, without letting their words chip away at my self-worth. I still attended family gatherings, but now I did so on my own terms. I set clear boundaries. If a conversation veered into judgmental territory, I would politely but firmly redirect it. If they started comparing me to others, I would simply state, my life is my own, and I'm very happy with my choices. Their power to manipulate me through guilt or shame had vanished. They learned, slowly, that their old tactics no longer worked. There were still moments of frustration, of course. My mother, in particular, would occasionally revert to old habits, hinting about Liam's enormous wealth, or how lucky I was to have snagged such a catch. But even those comments had lost their sting. I knew my worth, and it had nothing to do with Liam's wealth, or my old Civic, or their approval. Our wedding day was perfect, small, intimate, and filled with genuine joy. Liam and I exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming flowers, surrounded by our closest friends and a few family members who genuinely supported us, including my father, who shed a few tears. My mother and Jessica were there, too, quiet and somewhat subdued, perhaps finally realizing that this wasn't about them or their expectations, but about our love. Liam, in his perfectly tailored suit, looked utterly magnificent, but it was his eyes, filled with love and unwavering commitment, that truly made him shine. After the wedding, our life together was everything I had ever dreamed of. Liam was not just my husband. He was my partner in every sense of the word. We continued to support each other's careers, to explore the world, and to build a life rich in experiences, not just possessions. We occasionally used the Lamborghini for special occasions, or just for a thrilling drive on open roads. But our daily lives remained grounded, focused on purpose and connection. The old Civic, by the way, I eventually donated it to a charity that helps single mothers with transportation. It had served its purpose, a faithful companion on my journey to self-discovery. It was a symbol of my past, but it no longer defined my present or my future. Looking back, the Christmas where my family mocked my old car was the turning point. It was the lowest point. Yes, but it was also the catalyst. It forced me to confront the toxic dynamics of my family, to realize how deeply their materialistic values had impacted my own self-perception. And it paved the way for Liam's grand entrance, a moment that wasn't just about a flashy car, but about the profound declaration of my true worth, my newfound freedom, and my unwavering choice to live a life authentic to me. The biggest lesson I learned is this: your worth is not determined by the size of your house, the brand of your clothes, or the model of your car. It's determined by your character, your integrity, your kindness, and your ability to define your own happiness. Don't let anyone else's narrow definitions or insecurities dictate your self-worth. Your path might not look like theirs, and that's not just okay. It's often a sign that you're charting a course that is truly, uniquely your own. If you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or judged for not conforming, I hope my story resonates with you. You have the power to change your narrative, to set your boundaries, and to find your own version of happiness, even if it pulls up in a Lamborghini or, more importantly, if it simply arrives in the quiet, profound peace of your own making. Hit that like and subscribe button if this story inspired you. Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you've overcome family judgment or found your own path to freedom. And share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that true value lies within, not in what you drive.